Hey everyone, what's going on? So if you haven't heard or you've been under a rock or whatever, Bungie just recently made all expansions besides Lightfall, and there's an asterisk there, and all seasons from Lightfall free to play. So what that looks like on paper is if you have never spent a dime on Destiny 2, you've never launched the game, you currently have access to all 4 seasons from Lightfall. You have access to Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, and Witch Queen. That includes the raids. I'm not sure if that includes the dungeons. I don't think it does, since that's a dungeon key thing. That means you have access to seasons of Defiance, The Deep, Witch, and Wish, which are all 4 of the current seasons. Those have some very, very good stuffs in them, and it has actually kind of resulted in a bit of a spike in the player base and player count, and as a direct relation, I guess, people are now kind of in a bit of a mad dash, gathering what they can for like craftable patterns and all that kind of stuff, since a lot of people haven't played this year, or they took a break at some point earlier before Season of the Wish. And this video is going to kind of cover from the speedrunner perspective, or at least my own. I can't really speak for other people, right? What I would say to focus on if you maybe do want to continue playing going forward, or you're not really sure what to do when your friends are not home or at school or at work or vice versa. Moving forward, before we kind of jump into here's what you need to get right now, log in and buy this now, you know, it's not going to be anything like that. I'm going to talk about some, I don't want to say prerequisites, but some things to consider. And the first one is, it is going to be a little bit of an hour dump. It's not like sit there and shit bucket for 100 hours, but it's going to be up there of like, hey, here's a couple hour grinds. And with this in mind, and I'm kind of approaching this in the mentality of, you're someone who has played before, but you are just now getting back into it because maybe you played Defiance, realized Season of Defiance was the worst thing Bungie's ever released, and decided to come back now because everything's free, or, you know, something along those lines, that you have some semblance of experience. You have some of the more important items like Izanagi's Burden and whatnot, right? Continuing on from that point and mention, I'm approaching this with a sense of efficiency involved, and like kind of not wasting as much time just bashing your head against the wall and, you know, nerd necking a pattern when you have realistically close to a month to kind of get that done with. That's not true, but you get what I mean. With all of the introductions out of the way and the prefaces and whatever, nearly 3 minutes into the video, if you just want to know what I'm saying to get, I'll put the timestamp literally on the screen right now. Just go to that, and that is the YouTuber told me to get it, and here's what I'm getting perspective. If you want a little bit more of a minimalist breakdown and approach season by season and by source, I'm going to go through that right. So, starting with Season of Defiance, again, this is that awful, awful season. The first one in Lightfall. I can't recommend anything as like an S tier pick, but I will say Prodigal Return is an okay grenade launcher if you are desperately needing one and you cannot get your hands on some of the other grenade launchers. Again, breech loaded, not the drum ones. That I'm going to suggest. I think it looks cool, and that's about all it has going for it. Moving into Season of the Deep, this was the second season. We have a bunch of mid-weapons that PvP players like spare rations. The only ones that I can recommend are Until Its Return if you do not have the craftable Aikilos shotgun, or a Distant Pull if you just don't have a good rapid-fire shotgun or sniper rifle like the Supremacy or the Aikilos sniper. That's kind of the only ones I can recommend there. Now we're at Season of the Witch. There's like one thing I can say that's alright. If you go super, 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 super dry on a rocket launcher, the Semi-Optician is okay. It's high impact. It doesn't really have great rules for PvE, but some people like it. This is like a last resort thing. I like throw this in F tier, if you're wondering. And here we are at the granddaddy of all seasons here. We are at Season of the Wish, also known as Riven. This one has quite a few yummies to get. The more important one that I'm going to say, and one of the most important weapons, is Scatter Signal. This is a rapid fire fusion that has absolutely cranked perks. It's not going to turn you into God overnight, but it's very, very good to get as like a intermediate, you know, maybe even more casual player who doesn't, you know, do a lot of the like high core speed running, stuff like that. More importantly, this is where you're going to be spending a lot of your time if you need to make builds or, let's say, just get better armor in general. Maybe you want to take the next raid a little more seriously. This armor decodes with criminally high stats. To give an example here, I will decode a helmet real fast just to show. Grab this, and I guarantee it's going to be at least 63. There you go, 67 with 2 spikes. Unfortunately, it's int, so we're going to have to can it, but good example. This stuff is all very easy to unlock, which is why this season's kind of busted. Moving away from the seasonal stuff, we've got a little bit more generic things, like what the man, the myth, the legend, Commander Zavala has at the Vanguard repository. I don't know. Anyway, empty vessel's a really, really good breach loader that gives you the options of both disorienting and spike grenades with 2 pretty solid secondary perks, and also it looks really cool when you shoot it. That's objectively more important. Moving past that, we've got a couple of nightfall weapons. The Slammer's a big one that I'm going to suggest a lot of people try to get next week, because next week is the last, obviously it's going to be the last time you can get the Slammer for this season. I don't know if it goes away, I don't think it does, but you can't get it again because the season ends soon. So definitely maybe spend some time trying to get your hands on one of this. It can get Cold Steel and Eager Edge, which kind of knocks 2 birds with 1 stone. Cold Steel lets you freeze champs, which stuns them, and a couple other stuff. And it's just a vortex, right? These are good swords, and it's, I mean, it's stasis. Who doesn't like stasis, right? Moving past that, we have the Undercurrent. This is a wave frame. If for some reason you cannot get a Forbearance that does something useful, you can also multi-farm this with Empty Vessel. Again, we're talking about efficiency. Don't worry about it, I'll get to that later. This can get a solid roll that's comparable to the Chain Reaction Forbearance. That's kind of all I have to say about that. And if you, for some reason, have it unlocked, maybe you quit playing this season, but you managed to get your hands on one, you can no longer get Warden's Law, because the last week for this season it was like a couple weeks ago. This thing's really, really, really good if for some reason you want to use a primary, and if you're a hunter especially with Lucky Pants, this thing cooks. Like, we're a whole steak dinner. John Gambit doesn't really have too much, but he's got a good alternative rapid fire frame. Or if you don't have Ikilos and you need an energy slot, this is a cool one. The only downside to this is you gotta play Gambit for it, and it's random rolled and you can't craft it, so yeah. I don't mind Gambit, but most people don't want to play Gambit, so these weapons have pretty low relation to Into the Light, but I figure I might as well mention them since they did get updated perk pools recently. And that's going to be some of the Dares of Eternity weapons, and I can't believe I'm saying that. One of the best trace rifles in the game right now is actually Retraced Path. Why? Because it gets Shoot to Loot and Incandescent. This is kind of like Solar's Volt Shot, I guess, and Shoot to Loot is, well, it's Shoot to Loot, right? I go for Light Battery and Fluted. Some people like Enhanced Battery. Well, you do whatever you want. And the other one is Wastelander. This is just a really, really stat-loaded, lightweight shotty. It's good for PvE, good for PvP. I'm saying Ledge from Gold and 1-2 Punch. You don't see this used too often on like Titans or anything over the Crota shotty or the Aikilo shotty. But if you have this and you're kind of in a pinch for that, this is a really, really good source. You see it used a lot more in Warlocks and Hunters, but yeah, I mean, hey, it's a good pick. You have it. It's about time I address the lady in the room. That is Mara Sov, right outside the Riven portal. During the middle of this season, we got this thing called Riven's Wishes. They are a series of quests that you can do. They give you items called wish tokens. They're just like little tasks you run and complete. And they give you a wish token. What does the wish token do? It's an item you can turn into her to get materials. You can get crafted patterns, exotics, a lot of good stuff. Hell, you can even get the seasonal mementos that you can't get anymore if you want those ugly things for some reason. But you already know what I'm gonna say. I think you get 6 or 7 of these. I would say your #1 priority coming back, get this pattern if you don't have it. If you have this pattern, get this pattern. Why? Because Apex Predator is literally the best in slot heavy weapon in the game right now. It is a genuine answer to every problem in the game if you apply it correctly. And if you for some reason can't get this, you can get Dragon's Breath from tier 30 on the pass for free. So it's still like you still have an alternative, but anyways, just get it, please. Please just get it. Just get the Apex Predator. If you had to sit down for 5 hours, all you had is 5 hours to play until the next season, this is the item that you should be going for. I want to make a humble mention about Dragon's Breath. There are a couple rules to follow with this. It's not like some crazy rotation heavy thing. It's just, if there are multiple players on your team using Dragon's Breath, you will snipe each other's ignitions, and it leads to a lot lower damage as far as I understand. So your best application of Dragon's Breath is one of 2 scenarios. 1, you are solo. 2, you are with a team of 1 to 6 players, and you're kind of just YOLO DPSing. And like, let's say it's you and 2 of your buddies doing a dungeon boss, like the ogre from Warlords or something like that. You could be using Dragon's Breath, one of your friends could be using Cataclysmic, and the other one using a sword, and that's like kind of a good balance out. Or they could be doing something else. You could have a buddy with Gallarhorn, another buddy with Apex. Ideally, this is not a situation you'd use Dragon's Breath, but if you have to, it's better than nothing. And that second rule is you really, really, really need that Catalyst. If you're gonna go the Dragon's Breath route, get the Catalyst. Sit in Shirochi, do whatever you gotta do, get that Catalyst made. And on the note of exotic weapons, Into the Light brought back the Whisper of the Worm mission, and this exotic's actually like kind of cranked once you get it upgraded, especially with field prep. It truly, like, completing the whole quest line and getting it is maybe a 1 hour endeavor, solo. Again, before they patched one of the out of bounds, I used to speedrun the Whisper mission, and I had like a 3.5 minute time in that mission, solo. This quest takes no time to complete, it takes no time to get the Catalyst, it takes no time to upgrade the intrinsic. You just go and shoot the oracles. There's 400 guides on the internet, on Reddit, wherever. I would recommend, because I feel like this one crops up more often than not with how prevalent Divinity is, and I would suggest using this over something like a linear fusion nowadays. And now finally, to get into the Light weapons, we've got things like Mountaintop, which is alright. I use it more of a movement tool. Some people might use it to shoot aliens. I reckon it's entirely up to you. We also have Falling Guillotine, which is a beautiful, beautiful weapon for both DPS and as a movement tool, as you can see. Whenever you heavy attack with your skate, it actually doesn't use ammo, which is pretty, that's pretty nifty, I've got to be honest. And we've got a nice DPS roll as well, quite beautiful. You have Vorpal and Surrounded, that's a pretty big, chunky wonky there for Mr. Crota. We've got a new top contender for DPS weaponry, which is Edge Transit. I had footage of this at Persis, the final boss of Spire the Watcher. When Cammy and I were farming, I was farming a Wilder Flight who was farming the sidearm, or whatever the hell that thing is that he wants. And we were comfortably one-phasing that boss with another guy who was also using Edge Transit. So definitely, like, this is a role you want to go for. There is a tech right now that people are doing where they'll stock up with Envious Assassin, and then they'll swap over to Cascade Point. I don't really know what that's all about, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Something to keep in mind. And we have either variant of Forbearance. This one's got Demolitionist with the Indomitability trait, or you can use the one from Val, which is, this works just as fine as well. This I think that congruent role, so something to consider. If you can't get this, there are, again, alternatives like Undercurrent, so it's not the end of the world if you can't get like a a good roll. Chain reaction, I would say, is your benchmark to go for, and then anything with this like ambitious or demolitions or whatever you can manage to get. I think it comes down to preference, but yeah, chain reaction is typically your benchmark here. And now we have a couple special cases. The first one is going to be Indebted Kindness. If you feel like you're having a lot of fun and you get the dungeon key, or you have the dungeon key and haven't done Warlord's Ruin, this is probably one of the best guns in the game right now for what it does, for what it offers. It's a special ammo sidearm that shoots rockets. And as you can see, it cooks a lot. It's very ammo efficient, and it works very, very well. You can also use this to die if you need to die, like it does self-damage, but it's pretty forgiving splash range. And this is actually currently a one-hit stunning barrier champs at every difficulty, which is understandable because, well, it's a special weapon, right? But as you can see, I can sit here and just point at the floor and this thing melts. Like, it's very, very good, and I'm excited to see if they make more of these. This is new from Warlord's Ruin, so should be pretty cool to see what they do with these. And if you find yourself sitting here like, oh no, I don't want to learn a new dungeon, well, I've got great news. It drops from every encounter, I believe, and the first boss is one phaseable solo, as you can see here. I can do the entire encounter in 63 seconds or less, or faster, or slower, or whatever, by myself pretty damn consistently. That has nothing to do with being an MLG gamer guy, and it's just like the encounter's fast and easy. And the last, and most certainly not the least, on this long list of weapons to talk about is the new Pacific Epitaph. This comes from Ghost of the Deep, and again, this is another one that's got that asterisk on it that's like, hey, if you have the dungeon key, here's something to consider. This is a stasis element waveframe that, like, it's alright. I mean, Tusk of the Boar is better, which is the Strand version from Iron Banner, but you can't get that. And this works in a pinch for whatever use case you may need a kinetic slot, like waveframe, and you don't have Tusk of the Boar, or whatever the IB one is called. It doesn't get like chain reaction, but it gets this per card redirection, which is okay. I wouldn't like focus too heavy on trying to get your hands on this, but like I said, it works in a pinch. So this is the part of the video where you probably jumped forward and you're like, all right, I don't care what you have to say, I hate your voice, what are you saying that I should get? If I had to make a list in order of importance or efficiency, in my opinion, I would say number 1, get the Apex Predator, then the Scatter Signal, then start doing Onslaught for Falling Guillotine, and ideally get it with Eager's Edge. Edge Transit and Forbearance if you don't have one already. Then get Retraced Path from Dares of Eternity. What this is going to let you do is it's going to let you possibly get Wastelander in the process, possibly other weapons as well. You're also going to be getting Activity, XP, and you're going to be getting engrams for, I'm pretty sure, every single season that you've grabbed the artifact for, if you just go to like the little things in the helm, which is going to let you focus stuff. Next up is next week, try to get your hands on a Slammer if you don't end up going for a Guillotine. And again, that's going to be the Grandmaster from May 14th to May 21st. And the next step after that is, if you want a breech-loaded launcher, again, this is optional. Do your GMs for Slammer, and then spend those engrams that you get in the rep and whatever on Empty Vessel to try to get a blinder or a spike launcher. After that, I would say do anything you can do while either farming coil to passively gather wish engrams, so that you can spend it on high stat armor at Riven, or Season of the Witch Vendor. And again, take a look at your unlocks. I think it's 8 pathways in Riven's Lair of Coil. That's like 3 coils, which is not that bad, to get some of the best armor ever in the game. And if you can't get a solid Forbearance, and you still need an Empty Vessel, wait the week after the Slammer, get an Undercurrent. And that way you'll still get your Empty Vessel, you get your Undercurrent. And if you suck really, really bad and you just can't get anything going, you can try to get your Doomed Petitioner while doing your coil grind. But I really, 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 really recommend just using Whisper of the Worm if you're going to use a linear fusion rifle. Aside from that, that's probably the best approach that I can suggest. I'll talk more about the prep and efficiency and stuff like that in a video like either tomorrow or the day after. It'll be the next one, but no promises on that.